Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webcast. We're so excited to be back. It's been a while, but we're happy to come back with this great topic. We have Christie's today, Christie's Jewels, and I want to jump straight in and just introduce Claibourne and Caroline. Hi, guys. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Great. Do you want to introduce yourselves a little bit, and we can just sort of set the tone about what we're going to talk about today?
Sure. So I will begin. I'm Caroline Ervin. I'm a specialist in the jewelry department here at Christie's in New York. I've kind of my background has kind of always been in the auction world versus just jewelry. But about 6 years ago, I decided, within the auction world that jewelry was really what I wanted to focus on. And so then I went and got my graduate gemologist degree and was fortunate enough to get a job here in the jewelry department. So that's my background. I'm also an auctioneer for the company, which is kind of a fun side job that has nothing to do with my day job, which is interesting.
That's great. Love that. You're an amazing auctioneer. We're happy for that.
And I'm Claibourne Poindexter. I'm also a specialist in the jewelry department in New York. And I started maybe 2 or 3 months after Caroline. It's coming up on 5 years. I worked in the auction business throughout college part-time, cataloging jewelry. But I've really loved jewelry and grew up going to auctions really since I was 15, 16 years old. And I thought, this is what I want to do. I had a time where I worked for a jewelry designer in New York in product development. And then after that, I was fortunate enough to be hired by Christie's in the jewelry department, and I've been there ever since.
Amazing. Great. Thank you so much for talking with us today. Just a little housekeeping for everyone tuning in. There is a chat box where you can interact with everyone who is also tuning in. And then there is a Q&A box as well. So if you have questions as we go through our talk, you can submit those, and we'll get to those near the end. So let me introduce myself. I'm Levi Higgs. I'm the archivist at David Webb. We have so many great stories that are just filling the archives, and we're trying to mine those a little bit with these webcasts. So we were just thinking about great collectors, and Christie's has had so many come through. And a little background about the company. David Webb himself, he was from Asheville, North Carolina. Claibourne's from North Carolina too.
North Carolina, shout out.
Yes. He founded his business in 1948, and through the 50s, 60s, and 70s before his untimely death in 1975, that's what we really think of as like the great David Webb period of him being alive, making all these fabulous, bold, colorful designs. And that's still what we continue with today. So I love this photo of him, these like contact sheets from the 50s. He's just like holding up all these great jewels on his desk. But so with that, we're going to dive right into some great David Webb collectors.
And the great thing is, Caroline, Levi, and I really tried to think about, some more unusual collections that we've sold over the years. And Caroline and I really also wanted to focus on ones that we have had a hand in some way. There are a couple that we have not. Which is, we start with Doris Duke, and we sold her collection in 2004 at Christie's in New York. It really was the auction of the season. It was one of those great sales where you had jewels, you had decorative arts, and you had her amazing wine collection.
Yes.
And she was such a patron of the arts. I mean, you look at Shangri-La in Hawaii, and I once heard that if you took the materials of Shangri-La and you actually tried to put an intrinsic value, it would be over $1 billion worth of materials that she.
I believe it.
But of course, in collecting Southeast Asian and Indian art, she also had a wonderful collection of jewelry, some of which was inherited. But in particular, she came into her own, and she really did love jewelry and collect jewelry. And so it was really great in the catalog to see this shift from the wonderful Cartier jewels that she had really inherited from her mother and other pieces that she had gone, to other jewelers, Verdura. But I would say her best relationship was with David Webb. And I mean, Levi, you talk about this clip, which has an amazing 9-carat diamond in the middle of it. Clearly she took it from something else.
Right. So the close-up there of the invoice it's 1957, and a few years ago in 2018, David Webb did an exhibition at Doris Duke's house in Newport, the Rough Point Mansion. And 1957 is sort of the late 50s is the time period when she's moving her residence to Newport. And she's starting all the restoration of the houses up there, the colonial and federal houses, and she's doing the Newport Restoration Foundation. So the exhibition at her house was all about her having a hand in design, whether it was fixing up these houses with architectural renderings and conferring with architects and things, but also simultaneously working with David Webb, bringing in her own material, having these drawings done, having all this invoice records and letters and things that we had in the archive that we could share with the house. So this clip was one of the pieces that we wanted to bring the drawing, show it at the show, and then you sold.
And was this brooch in the exhibition? Or
not
was
the actual brooch, but
the rendering and the information? Okay.
Yes, exactly. This is another piece that she had the material. She had the turquoise and the sapphires, and she brought those in to have turned into a necklace.
And I mean, I love that, you know, it really was a collaborative relationship. I know you'll talk about, you know, that sort of the inventory list that Webb had. Yeah. But you look at these sapphires and, you know, as a person who, we look at gemstones all the time, right? It's really about the color. It's not, you know, the turquoise is top, the diamonds are beautiful. The sapphires are dark. I mean, they're not top quality sapphires. But that wasn't the point. The point was the overall effect and what David Webb, the magic that David Webb could do with these stones.
Absolutely.
And she really loved this blue combination. As you will point out, she continually, I mean, she ordered these earrings. I think these earrings are dynamite in terms of, you know, a silhouette. I think that they're beautiful. And you know, you'll see that Doris Duke was not a small woman. She was over 6 feet. So, you know, it's really, it really popped on her.
Absolutely.
And I loved learning from you in the next slide, the bracelet. I didn't realize that she had ordered that from stock, or purchased it from stock, you said? Exactly.
So, you know, you see these records of all these things with her name on it, the drawings, that like figuring out exactly the combination of the stones, how the you know, drops are going to lay, whatever. But then this bracelet, just sort of walking you through our style card here, that shows yellow gold platinum, cab sapphire and turquoise diamond bracelet. That's like the name of it. And then this date here is when it was produced from the workshop, 1962. And then down here, 1965, Bill to Duke. So she purchased it at the same time she was purchasing the other custom pieces to sort of go with everything, to flesh out the set. But yeah. It's amazing. Yeah, and she clearly, what I loved is, you know, she had these and they worked together, but it wasn't a formal set. So she clearly, she wore jewelry the way that she wanted to wear jewelry. Absolutely. And you were talking about sort of personal relationships. This is like a tangible archival record of that personal relationship, because in the archive, we only really have 2 of these ledger books. And you can see it says 1966, 1967. We have one other that's like 1967 to 1968. But it's a daily record of every client that came in. So it says, you know, right here, it says Mr. Webb worked with Miss Duke. She was designing diamond pearl earrings, and then the date in November, and the sort of 1 and 2 versions you see, they're very subtly different, but like this ring of diamonds right here, these are sort of teardrop shaped. This ring, they're more just sort of set roundly. She was very obviously clear about, you know, the central pearl, the pearls all around the edge, like that's the look that she wanted, but it was just these subtle differences, and this is how it came out with the sort of teardrop shape. And when we were all talking about this, you know, Levi showed us yesterday, we were sort of all getting together talking about it, that photograph on the bottom left with the emerald drops, and sort of a light bulb went off. We did sell those emerald drops as a pair of David Webb earrings, but I assume that when, you know, the people that worked on the estate, when they went through the jewelry, they were already paired with those diamond tops, which were also by Webb. But I think it's really, really interesting that I didn't realize that those pearls in the center were detachable and that she could put the emeralds in them. Yep. And I love this photo of her leaving Studio 54. We were talking about in our catalog, there's a great photo of Andy Warhol sprinkling flower petals on her as she exits. So, I mean, she really lived life, you know, she didn't always have an easy life, but she did live life to the fullest. Absolutely. And she was a tremendously philanthropic human being. And it was just interesting, those
those pictures and the invoices that just tell the story, it really was unlike any other collection.
Yeah, and she, you know, she had a hand in every little bit. So whether she bring in her own pearls, bring in her own stones, you know, it just sort of shows the strength of the relationship with David.
Right. Simple, easy. I mean, and I just love her use of materials. At times she picked strange things. I mean, I remember there was a double strand opal necklace that sort of goes with these,
yep.
But the rondelles weren't even rock crystal, they were glass.
Oh, wow.
So she sort of went to the beat of her own drum, and I think that is really, really special.
Absolutely. So here on the left, you have her pair from the sale, and then the drawing of the opals, and then this pair over here is the pair that we recreated for the exhibition in 2018. And I think we called them the Newport earrings just for fun. So, and this, I love this document. It's from 1969. It details all the pieces and materials that David Webb was holding for her in his safe. So it's like, the following items belonging to Miss Doris Duke are in our possessions until further direction from your office. So, you know, pretty much at any given moment, you can telephone David Webb and say, oh, okay, take the parcel of rubies, turned it into a necklace. So, you know, here's this great sort of fringe, fun necklace with rubies and pearls.
I love seeing this list too, as Claibourne was saying, because it's like seeing her inventory and how he documented it as well. And of course, she was famous for traveling the world. And so we can only kind of imagine her picking up these stones and gems during her travels, which is so fascinating.
Very true. Okay, well, great. Let's move on to our next great collector. It's Caroline's.
I love this photo of her. I mean, I think we determined what it's high 80s, or you think it's 70s?
It's 60s, maybe? I'm not sure. I mean, it's got that bouffant, so it could be a few different eras.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, it probably is 60s, judging by her age there. But yeah, so for those of you who might be unfamiliar with her, this is Betsy Bloomingdale. She was a famous socialite, entertainer. We sold her collection at Christie's in 2017, and it was titled A Life in Style. And that really sums her up. Everything about her was fashionable, elegant, impeccably done. I mean, nothing about her life was you know, kind of out of control. She was very controlled about everything. And what I love about her is she kept impeccable records about what she wore, all her couture. She was famous for wearing mostly Dior, and she would notate on all her clothing when she wore it, what date she wore it. And that was kind of, I think it's sort of an era that has gone by, you know, that it's so rare in today's day and age, but she was a famous entertainer. So she also kept impeccable records. It was great in the sale, her collection sale that we had at Christie's. We had some of, you know, her notes with the table and the date and who sat around the table and what was served and what, you know, each guest and where they sat. And so it's so fascinating.
My favorite thing from that catalog that you did, Caroline, was there was a recipe for celery sticks with peanut butter and hot bacon. It's like so 1960s dinner party.
That's really bizarre.
But she loved Webb, and she wore her Webb really well. And so she, like I said, she's famous for her style, but her accessories always on point and always just enough, never too much. And so we have a lot of photos to show you of her. This was a set that was sold at Christie's. Yeah, with Mrs. Reagan, who we'll talk about a little bit later.
All iconic hammered golds.
Yep.
Sorry, we can jump to this one. This, from the archive, like, from my standpoint, it was really interesting to see how the design of this one sort of mutated over the course of them figuring out the design. Like, these were other options for these emeralds. You know, she must have had these components, the emeralds and the diamonds. These are two very opulent versions of this bracelet, but this is how it turned out. And sort of under this drawing, you can see like, oh, can we try to sneak in another one on the side here? But, you know, the way that it's just sort of this sleek meshing of high diamonds and then cool gold. I mean, I love it.
Yeah, that is what I love about this one too, because it's so recognizably Webb in the bracelet in the gold, yellow gold, but then the two top pieces I imagine are more kind of what she really wanted. And so then to fuse them both together is so her and Webb at the same time, which I love about it.
She also had a totem, which everyone loves totems. I love totems.
I love totems. And
totems sort of come out of the early 1970s. There's a whole series of them, and each of them were individual. He used all these interesting stones and combinations to make these great pendants. They were really wearable sort of during the day, but you could also class it up and wear it at night. We still make them today, and this is the drawing for this one specifically. It's a little different, obviously the stone was shaped a little differently, and he put the band of enamel around the center stone, but that's sort of the main idea there. There's my hand holding her totem at the viewing when you had it.
I forgot how big it was. It was not small.
No. And this is one of the only photos I could find of her wearing it, but and she's got it on some interesting chain too, which is great.
I love too the idea of the totem just in the history of David Webb too, because it lends itself so well to, oh, I found this stone, can we work that in, because everything is different about each little component, and I love that about them. And hers was really beautiful. I feel like hers is a little more simple than we often see in the totems, but of course that chain she was wearing on made it a little bit louder.
Just even the top section alone of the lapis and the fluted coral is like such a great contrast of colors, different textures, but really David Webb with those strong, bold, vibrant outlining with the enamel.
Yeah.
It's just happy. It's happy.
Absolutely. And she loved coral, so this is her, fabulous coral bracelet, fluted coral bracelet.
She loved orange, so she was an orange person. And it's funny because as we get into talking about Nancy Reagan a little bit too, she was a red person. And so I do love that these famous collectors of Webb really had their color and they were known for it. So Betsy Bloomingdale, yes, loved orange, as you can see. And I love this photo. I think it was taken at her exhibit, right, of her fashion.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say she loved orange. She's like wearing all orange in a room of all of her fashion that is all orange.
That was her favorite.
Yeah.
And I love that she wasn't afraid. I feel like a lot of people would be sort of afraid to match coral with a different shade of orange dress, but she wasn't afraid to do that, and she wore it all together. And it's just a happy color, and she was, a positive, happy person, and so it worked.
I just want to point out the rendering down here at the bottom. That's like a sort of a schematic view of how our carvers fluted the coral. Like we have a lot of these for different coral designs, different rock crystal designs. It's like a very particular view for how this thing is actually going to be put together.
I had never seen this bracelet until it came through. Have you, Caroline, seen one like this? I love the way it's squared off. I think it is, and the way it was made, each link with the screw, it was amazing.
Did they make it in other versions, Levi?
No, I don't think so. I feel like this is the only one. I'll have to check my research and my style cards, but I feel like that's the one. What interests me is that it is, to me, very much a daytime bracelet because, yes, there's a little bit of diamonds, but if you notice, the diamonds are set in yellow gold, and that's sort of atypical. Like, usually our diamonds are set in platinum, but I think it's very much this happy daytime bracelet. Okay, and we've got these also great coral earrings. A photo of her wearing them. Perhaps in a previous state, we were trying to decide if the pearls were moved or something, but that's how they came up at auction, at least.
At auction, yeah, that was fascinating to kind of see, because as Levi was just saying, if you look closely at the photo, it doesn't make exact sense with how they were sold, and so perhaps they were modified.
Webb gilded the lily.
Maybe.
He changed the orientation, added the frame, and added the pearls.
It's very possible.
Yeah.
This is fun. You were talking about her only wearing Dior, and I don't think this was in your sale, but I just wanted to sort of point out these fabulous photos of her, definitely in the 60s. The article title here from our archives is "Two Belts Are Better Than One," and the caption for the photo is "Mrs. Alfred Bloomingdale, wife of the Diners Club founder, wears two belts with her Dior dress, the one that came with it, and a belt of some 50 carved emeralds from David Webb." So you can sort of see, yes, there's the one with the fabric tassels, and then there's the David Webb one right there. And here she is wearing it as a necklace at some event. And if we flip forward, I wanted to share with you the style cards to sort of get a little bit of a better view of this piece. So it's kind of like Doris Duke, like buying things from stock, right? Like she bought the tassel at the bottom, and it was going to be paired with the necklace at the top. And then here she is wearing it with a beautiful sort of sunny yellow dress as a necklace again, with Joan Rivers. Perfect.
They all combine, I know.
And these ruby earrings, I think, were in the sale.
These were in the sale, and these went wild. They had a pre-sale estimate of 5,000 to 7,000 and sold at 35,000. So people really wanted these, and I think they're interesting too. I imagine these must have been a special order from her.
Probably.
Yeah.
So.
And they sort of remind me of the element on the emerald bracelet with the yellow gold, but just in a different form. So she clearly liked those kind of, that kind of.
And I just think it's interesting, even at evening, I mean, I don't know if she's at the Met Gala or where she is, but it's still yellow gold. She wore that hammered yellow gold suite, as Caroline was talking about with Mrs. Reagan. They're clearly at an evening event. She had her own style.
Yeah. She kind of had her very specific colorways, like, okay, here's the emerald suite, the emerald bracelet. Here's her ruby earrings that she's wearing with her pink ruby dress, and color combinations are very strict with her, it seems, which is good. And then we can sort of transition to the Reagans, which I think, Caroline, you were also talking about, right?
Yeah. So this is the Reagans, and I was fortunate to get to work on their sale, which took place back in 2016, and I got to go out to their mansion in Bel Air, and it was a really, really amazing thing to do. I mean, to sit obviously in a president's home and see how they lived. But the Reagans were public servants, and they were both, of course, actors back in their day, and that's how they met, an actor and an actress, and fell in love. And Nancy, really from day one, was completely dedicated to him. And so, politics aside, whatever you believe about politics, she really was so dedicated to her husband, and it was a really incredible love story. They were together, he was married once before, but pretty much for her entire life, and had a family together, took on politics together when he became the governor of California after a successful acting career, and then on to the presidency. And so, everything was pointed toward them during the 80s. And she was great friends with Betsy Bloomingdale. So I love how all these relationships overlap. Betsy Bloomingdale was even called the first friend during her presidency because they were very close. They obviously both lived in the Hollywood area. Yep. And she took a lot of influence in her style from Betsy Bloomingdale, which is also interesting to note. But of course, they were public servants. They didn't have the big budget that Betsy Bloomingdale did. And so Nancy was famous for wearing a few special jewels over and over again. And that did include some Webb pieces. I think some we see her wearing, she certainly borrowed throughout her lifetime, but she did also own a couple classic hammered gold, a Webb bracelet and earrings that we sold that she was photographed in quite often.
I just wanted to share some of the research that I had done on the Reagans, and specifically the Cancer pendant. David Webb was really into zodiacs. He was a Cancer. Nancy was the Cancer. So here they are on a plane. She's got her pendant on down there. You can sort of see it on this long chain. And you see it a little better there on the red coat. And it may not exactly be this very specific crab that I put up there, but it was sort of a closer look at what some of the zodiac symbols are from David Webb. Same with this pair of earrings. This isn't exactly the pair that she's wearing in these photos, but it's very similar style. I think Nancy's were emeralds, sort of fluted emeralds, but just a great evening earring. There she is with Betsy again. I don't think these were in your sale either, but it's just interesting to see sort of her style evolve, and sort of a grainy photo, but it's this black enamel pair of earrings. And I think the brooch there on her bust you did sell.
We did sell that, yeah. And I love making the tie too of, her, being a patriot and an American, and that she was, supporting an American jeweler and loved to wear that as well. And she did that, in her fashion, Claibourne pointed out quite a bit.
She loved Bill Blass.
Yeah.
She really stuck to her American designers.
Yeah.
Well, then you think about the Bulgari ring that's like the American flag ring. Like,
right.
Yes, it's an Italian jeweler, but it's an American flag. Like, perfect.
Yeah, that ring was such a surprise to find. And it's interesting, though, that she didn't wear that very much. I mean, we found one photograph of her wearing it, whereas other pieces we see her wearing over and over again.
Okay, so like sort of a through line with the Reagans, but we're going to transition here to Carol Petrie.
Mrs. Petrie, when I joined in September 2015, I was having an interview and all of that stuff. They mentioned that they had Carol Petrie's jewelry, and I was so excited because she was somebody that I had always admired, always very carefully studied in her jewelry style. Mrs. Petrie was a true Southerner. She was born in Greenville, South Carolina. And she actually moved up to New York when she was 19 years old, and she became one of John Power's Power Girls. And those were models such as Ava Gardner and Lauren Bacall. She modeled with them. And that's what Lauren did before she really started starring with Humphrey Bogart. So Mrs. Petrie was quite a beauty. And she moved to Paris in, I believe, 1948 and married the Marquis de Portego, who was a very famous playboy and racing car driver. He raced for Ferrari. And most interestingly, when they were married in 1949, Mrs. Petrie had her dress done by a brand new designer named Christian Dior. And they collaborated together, and he made her dress, and that started a lifelong love of haute couture. I mean, Mrs. Petrie was such a devotee. She would fly to Paris for the sales every season. And they even say that she had somebody that specifically took care of her clothing. That's how much she loved her clothing. But she really believed that jewelry was also an essential part of that entire look. And unfortunately, her first husband died in a car crash in 1957, and Mrs. Petrie didn't marry Mr. Petrie until 1979. So it's sort of interesting when we were talking through this. I mean, Webb passed away in, I think, 1975.
Yep.
But Mrs. Petrie had a lot of David Webb, and clearly it was something that was near and dear to her heart. Like Mrs. Bloomingdale, she had no fear of wearing yellow gold in the evening, as you can see in this photo. But the Petries really became not only people that were about the arts and culture, they were also huge philanthropists and donors throughout New York City. And so Mrs. Petrie passed away in 2015, and we were very fortunate to handle the sale of the jewelry. And I love this evening shot with the curved link, so glamorous, and she was the perfect example of a petite lady that could wear big jewelry and absolutely carry it off. In the next slide, I think it's interesting, the black enamel, the emeralds, the pearls. She also had a matching necklace and a pair of ear clips. That I thought it was such an interesting color combination that I had never seen before. And people really, really appreciated it, obviously, because during the sale, all of these things went well past the high estimate. Because she was one of those rare people that we just don't, like Mrs. Bloomingdale or Mrs. Reagan, we just don't have the opportunity to have those kind of collections anymore. The opportunities, of course, decrease as time goes on, and people don't collect like they used to, but she was a window into another world.
Right.
And
well said.
We had a lot of fun at this sale. This sale, it lasted till about 11 at night. It was a late sale.
Such a look. I mean, the red and the
such a look. We were talking about, I mean, it's a little, it's just, she was such a small lady, but it was so over the top in the best way possible to match the red with this turquoise. And I love this brooch. I think it's such a wonderful, the sugarloaf shape of the turquoise, which was then inlaid with the rows of diamonds. I had never seen anything like it.
Yeah. It's definitely like late 70s, 80s style. Like, I mean, look at the dress with the shoulder pad and the sequins, but it's that same sort of classic Maltese cross that you see over and over and over from David Webb. He has books on the topic, like heraldic imagery and family crests. He was really fascinated with them, and he just iterated on them so many different ways. rock crystal, turquoise, enamel, you name it, he did it. But I love exactly what you said, the whole like suite, from.
And she had an all diamond one, and it was kind of interesting. I had talked to Mark Emanuel, the owner, one of the owners of David Webb, about it, and clearly there was a rush put on it, very much like she had her clothes made. I oftentimes would like her jewelry made, and it needed to be ready at a certain point. So it was fascinating to look at those pieces of paper.
Totally. Also one of her great pieces. I love very much in the style of our big animal torsade bracelets. I think
this is a little bit earlier, isn't it? It would be before or predate Petrie's marriage.
Yeah. I mean, I think of these as like very much in the 60s, and if she wasn't buying them, then who knows how it came.
Well, she also, I think that she bought pieces not necessarily new as well. I think she worked, she wore what she loved, and she bought what fit into her wardrobe. So I just love this bracelet. This bracelet got so much attention during the pre-sale exhibition. It sold for, I think, 3 times more than it was listed for, but it was just a great piece of jewelry, and I love the Baroque element of this.
Yeah, I've never seen another one like this. This must be the only one. It's sort of this Renaissance Baroque dolphin.
It's just so chic.
And next we have the Drexels.
Caroline, Levi, and I sort of picked this one. I had just moved to New York, and I got to see this collection. Unfortunately, it didn't work at Christie's at the time that it was sold. We sold it in 2013, but Mrs. Drexel was half English, half American. She was born in England. Her father's family came from nobility, and her mother's family, her grandfather was one of the first casino owners in the United States. So Mrs. Drexel was born into extreme wealth. And it was so interesting reading, her biography and things. They always said she didn't need to work, but she really felt that she needed to make the world a better place. And I thought it was so interesting. She devoted almost her whole life to the healthcare field, even being an ambulance driver in World War II. So she moved to America right before World War II, and she worked at the Naval Hospital throughout World War II, Korean, Vietnam War. And it's just so interesting because if you find photographs of Mrs. Drexel, she's not wearing a stitch of jewelry. She's wearing a pair of pearl earrings, and that's about it. Just a pair of pearl studs. But we sold 32 jewels. I think the low estimate was maybe 800,000, and it brought just over 3 million, including the premium. And I would say at least 25 of those 32 jewels were David Webb. So this painting by Rene Boucher is really the only time you see a piece of jewelry on her, and it's just a quick brushstroke, but it just shows the glamour of Mrs. Drexel. And we just thought it was something. This was the kind of jewelry that we need to cover, and we'll see why. But Levi, talk about this turquoise Maltese cross.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's the Maltese cross, as you just mentioned, but it was fascinating to me to have this conversation with you two, and like you were providing the images of the jewels that you had, and I don't think her sale was happening when I worked at David Webb, but knowing this drawing, it was fascinating to see, they flopped the colors. Like, here's the design. It's pretty much exactly the same, maybe a few more diamonds, but at some point along the way, it was like, let's try it in turquoise and sapphire or whatever.
What would the red would have been, Levi? Would it be?
I would think coral, like a really deep coral, I think. I guess I could be wrong, but maybe carnelian or something. But I would imagine coral, especially in that time in the 60s. This is one of the images that we used to promote this talk because, I mean, that ring is just insane. That's like one of the best.
She had great cabochon emeralds. But we were talking yesterday as a group about the fact that, again, she had things that absolutely coordinated with one another. They weren't necessarily made to, they weren't full formal suites, but you'll see there's another brooch with an extraordinary cabochon emerald. And she clearly knew what she liked and ordered it. And there's a pair of wonderful diamond ear pendants, and she had a great 12-karat round that Webb mounted for her that went with that. So I love these. I thought they just had such movement. And they really don't, you can't capture them in a photograph. You have to see them being worn.
And the combination of the yellow gold, diamond's set in yellow gold and then the diamond's not set in yellow gold, maybe platinum. Just give it this, like, I don't know, sort of ethereal warmth. And over here, I'm just going to walk people through these. David Webb worked on a very specific pad of paper. It's like an 8x5 pad of paper. He worked in pencil. So that would be his own hand sort of figuring out how this diamond earring was going to go. And then the black that you see, those are hand painted. So he had artists that he employed that would like execute the final sort of client presentation drawing. Obviously the one that she picked is sort of a little worse for wear. It got handled a lot, or, you know, mailed back and forth or something.
I like to think she slept with it, you know, on her bedside table, thinking about what she was going to have made. I mean, it's clear that she favored the drawing on the left.
Yeah, exactly. And then, oh, here's the other brooch you were mentioning. Sort of
yes, this is the brooch that coordinates, doesn't necessarily match the ring, but works beautifully with it. Yep. And we were talking yesterday about how it's kind of a, I don't know what kind of flower it is, but it's still, it looks like David Webb. You've got these shots of yellow gold and this beautiful, you know, 12 karat Colombian, you know, very minor oil emerald. And, you know, just to show you the popularity, I think this was in for 80 to 120,000 and it brought 250,000. So, you know, it was one of those great intersections of design meeting beautiful gemstones. And the pearls on the left are extremely special. Those are natural pearls. We sell both at Christie's, cultured pearls being aided by the help of man to be created, and natural pearls, something naturally gets into the oyster to irritate it and create these pearls. These sold for $1,050,000 hammer. So they were extraordinarily special earrings, and clearly she very much valued Webb to have these, you know, made.
This sort of speaks to the whole sweet thing you were talking about. It's kind of that Doris Duke story again. This is a brooch with a great yellow sapphire in the center, emeralds and sapphires around the outside, but it was a piece from stock. So, you know, you've got the drawing here that doesn't have a name on it. It's just got the serial numbers and style numbers as it's being created to go to the workshop. But then over here you have pieces from her specific client file of making things, specifically maybe to match this brooch that she had picked out.
And I love these earrings. We talk about, you know, there are certain Webb motifs that are iconic. You think of the zebra bracelet, or you think of, you know, one of the rings with the gold wire work and the diamond dome. Yeah. And you look at the bottom pendants of these, and there was another wonderful Webb necklace that's iconic that belonged to Rhys Stevens, the famous opera singer. Yep. And it has sort of this type of motif in between the diamond X's, where you've got blue and yellow sapphires. And it's very much a 1960s Webb. We associate it with Webb, but you really have to sort of think about it. And so I just love these earrings, and I love the way she had them, again, coordinated. They don't have the sapphires, but they do match the emerald and the yellow sapphire in the brooch.
And the little subtle like gold outline that comes out of the corners, like that's sort of the
It's almost nautical, which would be appropriate for Newport.
There you go, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Oh, and then this sort of dovetails perfectly in what you were saying about like using your important materials.
Right, I mean, quickly, Caroline and I just wanted to talk about the Annenberg Diamond, which we sold in 2007 or 2006, I can't remember. But Mrs. Walter Annenberg, just to show a client's devotion to a house, I mean, Mrs. Annenberg could have gone to any of the major diamond merchants in the world, and she chose David Webb. And so that speaks volumes to a client relationship with this American house.
Totally.
And we just want to point it out because even though it's not a traditional Webb jewel, it was made by David Webb for Mrs. Annenberg. Yep. And it sold for a world record price per carat for a white diamond, which was only broken by Elizabeth Taylor. So we just wanted to point this out as a great relationship.
Thank you, yes. Another great personality who we sort of touched on earlier with that photo with Betsy Bloomingdale is Joan Rivers, who, please, Caroline, tell us a little bit about her.
Yeah, so I know she needs no introduction, right. Joan Rivers, but she, as we know, famous comedian who really was a trailblazer. As a woman, I admire her so much. Her work ethic was off the charts her entire life. I mean, this woman worked so hard at her career and to be amazing at what she did. And, you know, quintessential New Yorker, which I also love about her. But she, so she died in 2014, and we sold her her collection sale. So the contents of her apartment and some of her jewelry, some of her costume jewelry. We sold that in 2016. And as we all know, you know, loud, bold personality. And, you know, similar to Mrs. Reagan, she didn't own all that much web, but as you can see from these slides, she certainly wore a lot of web. So she was, you know, strategic in getting it somewhere to complete her outfits. But we did sell, you know, a great classic pair of hammered gold earrings from her collection.
Yeah, these images are during the fashion police era, so I think we were doing a little bit of loaning to the show of, you know, great things from our Beverly Hills store to look great on camera, and they certainly did. She pulled it off with her bold personality, as you say. So.
And I love that she's not wearing one piece or two pieces.
Oh no,
it's
a
4
whole
or 5 pieces.
Yeah, it's a whole event,
and it works.
It does. And another tiny woman, you know, wearing all these big jewels, which is fun.
Okay, so then, sort of to wrap it up, I mean, we have a bit more to go, but I was interested that both of you wanted to pick your favorite piece of web at auction that maybe wasn't necessarily from, you know, some big collector lots, but please walk us through your choices here.
Yeah, so my pick for my favorite one we've ever sold, or that I've gotten to work directly with, is the frogs. Showing on the left there, the black and white Warty frogs with their black and white pearls. This piece really stole my heart because it, you know, obviously David Webb is famous for color, and this one doesn't have much color, you know, black and white, yet it's still so bold and so graphic that I just think it's so much fun. And you could wear it like you see it there as a necklace, you know, with a frog on either side, or a frog in front, frog in back. Or you could separate them and wear them as bracelets with just one of the frogs. And so it's a great example of a versatile jewel. And it was from a great collector of web who has some incredible pieces of web. So we always, you know, like to see that. And it sold really well. It sold for $52,000 over a $20,000 low estimate. Wow. So, you know, definitely people were fighting over it.
And I think it was featured in our book as well.
Yes, it was in the book, and it was also exhibited at the Norton Museum.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
They're beautiful.
Claibourne, your pick, please.
And it's sort of funny that Caroline and I both picked pieces that are devoid of color. But, you know, another thing that Webb is, of course, known for is rock crystal. And I think this was, Daphne took this in, and I think this is one of the greatest web necklaces I've ever seen. It's a very, very large detachable pendant set with diamond bands, and then you've got this wonderful chain that can be taken apart and worn at different lengths. So you could wear 2 bracelets and a shorter necklace, or you could wear 4 bracelets and no necklace. It really had that versatility and adaptability. And clearly other people thought so too. It was in for, I think, 30 to 50,000, and I want to say it sold for over 100. Wow. So it's one of those great pieces, and it's sold to a wonderful jewelry collector who I know wears it.
Love to hear that.
And so that's what it's all about, you know, the next generation of great jewelry collectors wearing, you know, these web pieces.
Yes, couldn't agree more. And I don't know if anyone can see it on Caroline's lapel, but she's been wearing this fabulous leopard brooch. She's going to get a little closer there.
Yeah, this is in our online July sale, which just started today, and it ends on August 6th, so it runs for a couple weeks. And yeah, I wanted to wear this today because I think it's probably also one of my favorites that we've had in. I think it's such an interesting piece. I think it's unusual. I'd never seen this style by Webb come through auction before. And I love that it's like kind of a matte sort of gold. And it's in incredible shape, and it's so beautiful. And so I love that you found this rendering of it.
It's one of my favorite pieces too. It's actually, I know we've talked about it a little bit, but we're trying to have a Walk in the Woods exhibition, and this piece is featured in that exhibition. So once we can have it, we'll let everyone know. But yeah, it's so fun, like the tree branch with the brown enamel. I mean, it's not something you typically see, but
diamond collar, I love that too.
I love that translucent brown enamel. I haven't seen very much of it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And then I just want to throw in some of my favorites that I had seen at auction over the years as well. I always go and talk to you guys whenever you have a viewing and see what's there. And these two just stuck out to me. The ram's head. It sort of reminded me of that dolphin. I think that the head and sort of the other feature could be removed from that sort of solid gold bangle, and then presumably you could have a torsade as well. And then the daisies. Who doesn't love a good flower brooch? Yeah. So that's sort of the end of our prepared slides, but now we can take some great audience questions if you guys are up for it. So this is an interesting question. Did any of these amazing jewels sold at auction end up in museum collections, or were they all private purchasers?
Caroline and I would have to do some very serious digging because we sell so much web.
Right.
Generally, and Caroline can speak to this too, generally we have clients who buy the jewelry to wear it. It's meant to be worn, and particularly David Webb. I always laugh because my first employer in the city, one time he asked a lady in Texas, why do you only wear David Webb? He couldn't understand why he couldn't sell her a piece of jewelry. And she said, well, honey, if I walk in the middle of a football field in a stadium, everybody sitting in the bleachers is going to know that I'm wearing David Webb. It's completely identifiable and iconic. So our clients buy to wear.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love to hear that. And museum collections that have David Webb are, there's the Met has a zebra bracelet, the Musée d'Art Décoratif in Paris has a frog brooch. The Newark Museum has a tiger brooch, tiger bracelet, I think. So there's a few. And the Museum of Arts and Design in Columbus Circle has a monkey brooch, just like you see on the slide. So there are some web out there in the museum world too. So let's see. This is another good question. How do auction houses like Christie's and David Webb work collaboratively? I mean, we get to do fun things like this, but of course we also do a lot of authenticities for you guys. I mean, if you have, pieces you want researched or, a little more information, you send it to us and we can look up the style card and the original dates and all that. And I would imagine that having a cert of authenticity helps a sale, maybe?
Yeah, it definitely does. And that is such an important relationship, and one that, we really value, especially with David Webb, in that, we're all jewelry specialists here. We're seeing all sorts of different makers come in. And of course, some David Webb, we're like, absolutely, it's 100% right. But whenever we come across something more unusual, or maybe it's been modified, we're not sure, it's always really important to send them, off to David Webb to get a certificate to make sure everything's sound and it's in its original condition, so that we can be really transparent with our buyers. And so it's an important relationship for sure.
It's a fun process too. I gotta say, I love researching things. And one other question, let's see. This is interesting. Do you feel like David Webb collectors, like specifically the ones we saw today, have any similarities in their personalities? Like, what makes a David Webb collector?
Caroline, you answer that because you had a good point yesterday about it.
Well, I had a good point. So as we were developing, this chat and kind of talking about who would speak about whom, it really struck me that the three women I kind of spoke about, Bloomingdale, Reagan, and Joan Rivers, were three incredibly different women. We have a wealthy socialite there, we have a public servant, and we have a really hardworking woman who, made her life for herself. And so while I think they do all have, great taste in their own unique way, they were really from very different places and had very different lives. And so that to me is what is fascinating about David Webb, that we're all unified by by Webb pieces, which is fascinating to me.
And it's definitely like the bounty of choice with all the different jewelers in the world, but to pick David Webb, like you're aligning yourself specifically with like bold choices, colorful choices, maybe not even with the rock crystal and the black and white that we saw as well, but it's a particular viewpoint that you get to align yourself with. And
it's confident.
It's confident. There you go.
It is confident. That's a good descriptor.
Okay, well, great. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us for this fun webcast. I hope everyone watching enjoyed it as well. I had a great time. If you want to learn more about our webcasts, you can look on our website and see the link that's on the screen here. There's old episodes that you can watch on YouTube as well. And, keep looking at Christie's upcoming auctions too. So
thank you for having us.
Thank you, Levi.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, everyone. Bye.